We have the usual agreements with the notaries where they pay our fees. So it comes usually from the notary fees. Yes.
Okay.
We charge them when we don't have a real estate agent involved. That's because we do your job.
Hi everyone, Taniel here. I'm really excited about our upcoming interview with real estate attorney Orlando Santamaria. We've got a lot to talk about, so I think this is going to be a two-part podcast interview. We're going to cover how a real estate trust functions in the restricted zone in Mexico, the notary's participation, red flags to look out for, pitfalls, pre-construction contracts. There's a lot to cover, a lot of great information. I think you guys are going to love this. So enjoy the interview. It's going to be a two-parter. So let's start.
Welcome to the Retirement in Mexico podcast, your guide to a life of sun, sand, and possibility. If you've ever dreamed of spending your golden years under the warm Mexican sun, surrounded by breathtaking beaches, rich culture, and an exciting community, you're in the right place. We're here to guide you every step of the way with expert insights, inspiring stories, and everything you need to know to make your move with confidence. The best chapter of your life is yours to create. Let's do this.
Well, plus, I mean, they don't know like the whole process of acquiring a property. So it's quite different. Like a lot of purchase sale agreements in the United States, I've seen a bunch from California. You know, it's like 1 or 2 pages. You check, you sign, and that's basically it. And our purchase sale agreements here, at least in Vallarta, because a lot of our clients are native English speaking and they don't speak any Spanish, but a lot of contracts that are in Spanish and English. Of course, the English is always a courtesy translation. And if you ever go to court, the Spanish side prevails. But there are a lot of clauses, you know, like the real estate trust and a whole bunch of other things they're not familiar with. So I encourage people to ask the questions. I like to go through the contracts clause by clause. And I've had some clients, Orlando, they're like, well, I'm going through the contract clause by clause. They're flipping through all these pages. And they're like, are you going to really read the whole contract? I'm like, yeah. You know, you need to understand what you're signing, what you're committing to, what you're binding yourself to, you know, so legally binding contract. So yes, we're going to sit here and go through clause by clause, you know, and some people say, well, I just want to sign. I trust you. And well, that's flattering, but I still need to explain everything, right? But if it's a client who's bought 2 or 3 properties and sold a few, they know we can go through it a lot faster. But for the most part, I think it's really important to explain things. And then, you know, they're going to have questions. And I want them to feel 100% comfortable before they sign anything. You know, that's really key. And of course, when it comes time to signing the deed, it's all in Spanish. You come in there and you're going through page by page and explaining everything, right?
Yeah, that is correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at closing, sometimes some of my clients are like, oh my God, like, we're going to fall asleep, right? So more and more, I tell them, I ask them, I don't explain, use the most important, because a lot of those boilerplates from the bank, it's a lot of legalities that really sometimes don't even affect my client. But, you know, the most important things I always tell them, I said, this is the most, like, if something goes wrong, you need to know this. Like, this is the most important items of the contract.
So if you're a closing coordinator for a transaction, I mean, do you charge an extra fee for that service? How do you get paid?
Usual agreements with the notaries where they pay our fees. So it comes usually from the notary fees. Yes. We charge them when we don't have a real estate agent involved. That's because we do your job, guys. Then they said, oh, we can, I said, yeah, but we're going to charge your fee because we have to do your job, the real estate agent job, which you are taking, you know, the seller is taking like 6%, 8% on the commission. They didn't charge you as well because you had real estate agents. And also sometimes depending, some of the clients will be more like, like more work. Like they will be here like every day asking us, and then I tell the real estate agent, I'm sorry, I do have to charge fee because that client is not asking regular questions, but just like is coming to my office every day, like, like unannounced and things like that, which we don't mind. We always do it. And we have time. That's the thing for my staff. I said, don't just talk to them. Don't say like, oh, you don't have an appointment, go away. Like, if we are available, we talk to.
In Vallarta, we use, escrow, but, escrow here in Mexico for us, the only thing they do is hold the funds almost like a bank, and then they disperse the funds. They really have no other integral role in a transaction like they do in the States. But escrow is not used everywhere in Mexico, right? So how do people buy and transfer money? Let's say if I got a client who wants to buy in Guadalajara or Mexico City, and then they say, okay, we're going to use escrow, and the other agent is going to be like, what's escrow? We don't use escrow. So what's a safe way for them to purchase if there is no escrow involved?
Oof. That's a safe. I would recommend to use the escrow and just better explain to the other party what the escrow is. Because, I mean, you could use, certified checks to be like you can ask the notary to wherever you're going to close the transaction. You can have a certified check and the notary can keep that check until the closing happens. So your seller knows that you're real, you're actually committed. And you have that 10%, usually it's the 10%. So for example, if you're buying a $400,000 property inside Mexico or another part of Mexico, you can just do a certified check for $40,000 and keep it safeguard at the notary, right? Don't cash it so the seller knows the money, the check is there. And at closing, my advice is just transfer the money while you are at the notary. Like you have the seller and the buyer. So we have had those transactions even here in Vallarta where the seller does not know escrow. They just don't want to use escrow because he's a Mexican seller. They don't know the concept. They don't understand it and they don't want to deal with it. They'll say, I'll sell the property. And a real estate agent comes to me and said, Orlando, I have this situation. What do I do? I said, well, you can do this. The 10%. So I tell my seller, this is the 10%. You can get a copy of that check and you can take it home. It's going to be at that notary. You can even call the notary or check yourself that is at the notary. And then at closing, when we are at the closing table, I usually book a very early closing just through the bank situations and all that. And the day previous to that, I tell my buyer, just, make sure your bank can do that, make that transfer on that day. Like they have all the information from the seller, just tell your banker, like tomorrow at this time, you have to send the money. So they made the transfer. And I tell my seller as well, check with your bank, tell them that you're going selling the property because we have very heavy anti-laundering money laws. So if the bank sees that there's money coming into your account and they don't know, like in this case, $400,000 or it's $360,000, they would say, where is this money coming from? And they are obligated to either give notice to the IRS, to the SAT, to the Mexican SAT, or they can even freeze in your account because they call it illegal activity or not illegal, but suspicious activity.
Suspicious.
Entitled to do that. So my advice is always tell your banker or who you deal at the bank with that you are doing this just to avoid, because some people say, well, it hasn't happened. I said, no, it doesn't happen all the time, but you might win the lottery or just make a phone call or tell them or just show them the contract so they know,
Yeah, because I think, some U.S. banks, you have to physically go in there and fill out the paperwork to initiate and authorize that $360,000, whatever amount that is. You can't just call them or email them and they'll do it. So it's really important to let them know way in advance. So they'll program everything. You can sign all the paperwork and then you have an agreement of it's going to be a phone call. You're going to say, okay, hit send. It's going to be an email or whatever it is just to have it all set up. And you're not figuring it out at the closing at that time, right?
That's correct. Or I even had clients as buyers that they were buying property. I have a couple cases, and one of them that I recall they was buying a property. It was $900,000, about almost $1 million, and the bank said, "No, we cannot do it by phone. You have to be here present. Like you have to actually sign the paperwork." So that is very. To me, I tell my client, just give me the power of attorney or give the power of attorney to somebody so we can represent you at the sale and then you can do the transfer. So we are at the closing table signing in your behalf, acquiring the property in your behalf.
What are the most common fears or misconceptions foreigners have regarding purchasing property in Mexico?
I would say the most widespread is the one they think you don't, they said, you don't own the property. Like if you are buying in the restricted zone, the bank owns the property. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like, no, it's not my property. I just rented it. So I have to just explain to them how the trust works. I said, well, if somebody's used to the trust in the US or Canada, I explained to them, do you have a trust in the US? Some people do. And they said, yeah, I do. I said, who owns the property? I do. I said, well, same here. You have it in a trust. It's the same thing. You are the one dictating what's happened with that trust. So same thing. And I said, it's like also having money in the bank. It's even better than having money in the bank just because in Mexico or banking law, when you have savings, if in case the bank goes bankrupt, or, your insurance of that money goes up to only to a certain amount. Like it remind us about like $300,000, so if you have more than like 800,000 in savings, you could, if a bank goes bankrupt, you could lose it. But if you have a trust in a property, in a trust, and the same bank goes bankrupt, they have to transfer everything that is not in their part of their assets, meaning money. So everything that is in a trust, they have to transfer to another bank. They cannot use it to pay debtors or to, it's just like they can't. By law, they have to transfer that.
I mean, who decides which bank to transfer to?
In the strict sense of law, it says, or, in the trust, the law where the trust is contained, it says the beneficiary of the trust have to decide it where to be transferred. In practice, it doesn't happen. Like, for example, if the bank buys another bank or buys a smaller bank, or they just transfer to that bank.
Yeah. And I've seen that happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Actually, like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah. Sometimes I have a client who wants to sell their property and I get a copy of their deed and I look at like some weird bank I've never heard of. Turns out they were acquired by another bank now. It's not reflected in the deed, obviously, but it's like, oh, that bank doesn't exist. So such and such bank bought them out 20 years ago.
Yeah, especially with those trusts, like people who came to, I would use the case of Vallarta, who came to Vallarta 30 years ago. They have trusts with banks that they don't exist anymore.
Right. Now, are all banks in Mexico authorized to have a trust for real estate?
Yeah, they all can use it. But a lot of banks, they don't do it. But yeah, they're authorized. Banks are the only entities authorized actually to do it. Because when the trust was created back in the 1900s, they were lobbying to get that chunk of business. So they got it. And, basically they are the only entities. There is also another entity called Sofome, it's used like a creditor kind of thing. And they also are allowed to use, the trust contract, but they use more like the warranty trust and those type of trust, administration trust, and, not the trust that we usually use for properties. The word ejido, like if you see the word ejido in a contract, like the property is part of an ejido, I'd say no, because, some people say, no, it's an ejido, but they will come in, we'll take it out of the ejido. I said, no, ejido is communal land. You can add that communal land as its foreigner, period. Okay, you can't. So just don't do it. That's mine. In the contract, once you go to the actual contract, you have to just make sure, like, for example, if you're that they have the property has no lien on encumbrances, that in the contract if you are buying pre-construction. To me, the most risky, I would say, it's pre-construction. Okay. Why? Because you are given pre-construction in Mexico. I don't really know how to work in the U.S., but I know this from my clients' experience of what they have told me. In the U.S. or in other countries, when you're buying pre-construction, you send the money to an escrow or the same way that you are doing buying it. So in Mexico, when you buy pre-construction, 99% of the times you send the money to the developer's account. Okay. So, and they're asking you to send 80% of some 60, something 80% of the purchase price.
Or sometimes less, sometimes like 30.
Sometimes it's 60, sometimes it's 40, sometimes it's 50, and then you pay like, a month by month, like it varies.
Yes.
My point is here is that is the risk. Like people feel like, well, will it be constructed? I always say to people, well, it is, it is a risk. So the ways that you can protect yourself from that risk is looking at who is the developer, what they have done in the area. If they are, if they are broke ground, check what the permits are. If the permits are according, what is permitted. Did they have all that? Basically, that the project they are developing has everything according to what is permitted by your municipality. Okay.
And how the project is being funded too, right? Yeah. Because sometimes they get a bridge loan from the bank, and then as long as part of the money comes from pre-construction. So
they have it's a administration trust. For that, they put the property in a different type of trust where the money, they get the loan from the bank, and then they put a lien on the property. And then every time, once they start building, every time they are selling a property, they just taking that lien out of that particular property. So that's also very common, and a lot of developers use it, but just, use that. And that's how you could minimize the risk. So I don't know. I think one time I got somebody was a bad review because of that, because somebody said, well, he didn't tell me they closed, the 5 or 8 development didn't happen. And I said, I didn't answer to that critic because I said, well, at the same time, those didn't happen. There was 25 that did happen. So like, or they were delayed or something. And I was like, well, that critique doesn't really make sense to me, maybe for other people, but I wouldn't mention to you, oh, by the way, around that, 4 didn't get developed because, you can see it. Or to me, that's not a flag, because if you're building something and you have all the permits and everything, maybe the other people didn't have the right permits. Maybe the other people didn't have the right environmental impact documents, like things like that.
Right. Well, I mean, in a pre-construction, of course, there are risks to consider. And that's why doing your due diligence is really important. Hiring a real estate attorney to review the contract, to give the legal review, like you said, Orlando, get copies, the deed to the land, the construction license, and all the other licenses and permits for you guys to perform your legal review. And there's always the chance something could happen in life, in the world, that the project is stopped, it's paused for a while, or it gets canceled. I've seen that in the States. I've seen that other parts of the world. That's a risk in pre-construction. The best you can do is to perform your due diligence, look at where we are now, everything they have in place, and if you want to move forward or not. And in Vallarta and on other parts of Mexico, like these big resort towns, like in Cabo, in Cancun, and Tulum, and Vallarta, and I mean, even in Guadalajara, I was in Guadalajara, man, there's construction everywhere. I mean, there are a lot of parts in Mexico. Real estate is booming. Are all those buildings, 100% of those buildings going to be finished? Chances are no. 100% of all the buildings being built in the United States going to finish? Chances are no. But the best you can do is to perform the legal review, get the attorney, and really dig in and dissect everything, and then come up with your opinion based on your findings. And then, the client can then make an informed decision. They want to move forward, or they would rather pass and look at something else, right?
And it's, sometimes I have made reviews where I tell people, if I would be you, I wouldn't buy there because they have this and that. I said, but at the end of the day, it's your money, and you have to decide what you do with it. I guess sometimes it's the same with doctors. Sometimes people try, and I'm not excusing myself, but just sometimes people put responsibility on you, like in the same way you as a real estate agent, and I always tell them, this is what I'm seeing here. This is what I recommend not to do it. Or if I would be me, I will buy it. I don't see anything that I will sometimes I have people that I buy myself pre-construction, and I tell people that I said, you see, I have bought pre-construction too. And I was as scared as you are, and I'm a real estate lawyer.
Yeah. Well, I've bought in pre-construction as well. And, I bought with a developer that I'm very familiar with, and they're one of the most successful developers in the entire Bay of Banderas. These last 10 years, they've got over, 18, 20 projects by now. So, I have the confidence in them. I've seen them finish all of their projects. So those are really key. Would I buy in a building that I don't know the developer and they're not funded well? I mean, then I'm a little apprehensive. I really need to do a deeper dive into it, and then just try to make the best decision from that point on. So that brings me to this next point is, what advice would you give someone who's feeling a bit nervous about the legal process purchasing property in Mexico?
If they have the opportunity to come to Vallarta, or to the place where they want to buy, I would say go and visit that place first. Okay. I have a lot of people that, they come to Vallarta, and I will talk about the place where I live. They come to Vallarta, they fell in love with the town, and they ask me, why don't you go walk? I start a conversation with, maybe a foreigner that probably bought already proper. They have gone through the process. They can explain you. This is the first, what you hear in general. Of course, sometimes that backfires because they say, oh, they had a really bad experience. And I said, well, the second is higher, go to talk to a lawyer. Go talk to a lawyer and tell you to explain you how it works and how, how does it feel? And also talk to a real estate agent because Taniel, like in any other profession, you have real good real estate agents and you have really bad real estate agents. Yeah. You have really good lawyers and you have bad lawyers.
Every career.
Every career has them, The advice is just go to somebody that you feel that is, in your opinion, like it gives you, we have that, I'm a lawyer, but I always tell I'm also a human being. So just go and feel that. How do you feel about it? Do you feel that it's okay? Do you feel that it's correct? Like go and talk to them. You got to explain about the documents, how the process works, did they give you examples I have clients who come to me and they ask me those questions. They said, Orlando, give me all the and I always tell them, what are you concerned about? And once they tell me what they're concerned about, then I address those concerns. I tell, this, and this. And yeah, the advice will be, first visit the place. To me, if I would buy in a place, I would go and visit and I would see it. If I like it, even if it's for investment, just to see cause somebody can tell me, oh yeah, it rents a lot. But once I see it, I go and I feel the sense of the town, and that's my advice. Go there, talk to a professional that is involved in real estate. Either is a real estate agent, either is a lawyer. And then from there, you can do it, because sometimes people get their advices from a waiter, which is okay, fine. But then they said to me, okay,
Or someone on the beach having margaritas, they know everything about real estate.
they said to me, oh yeah, I said, who told you this? Like, oh yeah, this waiter said, I was a waiter myself. I know a lot of my friends.
I've been a waiter.
I said, but they do not know about that. So he said that, it's okay if they told you, but don't just come to a professional, go to a professional that they can.
Yeah, it's really important to really consider, like, where are you getting this advice from? And, there are a lot of people that have been coming down here for many years. They're tourists and they're at the beach partying, having a great time. Just because they've been coming down here for a few years, all of a sudden they feel like they know everything about real estate, the market, and they kind of put this nonsense in people's ear. And all of a sudden they get frantic, they get paranoid, they're nervous, and it's not based on any facts. It's just,
they don't even own property.
They don't own property. They've never looked at a property.
Talk to somebody who owns property, who they have gone through the process, so they can actually explain to you, they can talk to you about how the process.
Yeah, their whole journey, that's really important. And I'm also a firm believer, I think when you're going to hire an attorney, this is just me, is hire an attorney from that city, because I've had clients where they want to get their attorney involved. I'm like, okay, cool. Who's your attorney? And it's somebody from like Seattle, or it's somebody from Mexico City who knows nothing about real estate law. In relation to the coastline, real estate trust. And I'm like, okay, that's fine, but have they done any transactions in our region along the coastline? Do they know what is a real estate trust? Have they ever seen a contract in Mexico? So, and they don't. And what happens is sometimes these attorneys are asking me a lot of questions, just basic questions, and that I answer, and they wind up saying the same thing to their client and charging them a fortune. So I just feel like if you're going to hire an attorney, ask for some references of real estate attorneys from that city. This is my personal take on it. Not that everyone, needs to follow this advice, because those attorneys, so like someone like you who knows the ins and outs of purchasing in Banderas Bay and Puerto Vallarta, who knows other professionals to contact, who's networked and who's done this 1,000 times, rather than just getting someone. And these other attorneys, they might be brilliant. I'm not trying to discredit them, but they have no experience in this region. And I've had a lot of times they just don't understand the way things are done here, and they wind up giving the wrong advice to the client. And I've seen that happen quite frequently. And I think there's a better way to go about it.
I have seen it too. And especially when you said when they ask the basic questions, and there's of this from firms who are international firms, and they send me the questions to me. I'm like, I don't know how to answer this, because like I answered them. I said, but this is very basic. Like, this is what I learned. I don't know, when I start my business, like, that this is like very basic. Or we have lawyers from the US asking me questions and, like outlining questions and telling me what to do. I tell them this cannot be done. And they said, why not? And I tell them, well, I cannot give you my law degree in an email. It cannot be done just because it cannot be done. I explained to them in briefly because of this and this, and they want to know more. I'm like, listen, we have very different law system. It's like trying to compare, water and oil. We have we do have some contracts that are similar, the trust contract being one of them, but once you I said we tropicalize the trust contract. That's the best way I can tell them. We put the Mexican flavor into it.
A little hot sauce.
Salsas.
So Orlando, this has been great. Thank you so much. That's a lot of great information you provided. If someone wants to reach out and contact you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
And the best way is always by email. That's the best way. We do have a website, which is www. Like the name of my company, Lex360.legal, or they can also put that lex360.com and we'll transfer them to legal. To contact me, it's Orlando at Lex, Lex, and then the number 3, and then the letter, it's a little bit hard. 60, the SESENTA.com. So that is, email is the best way to contact me because I always on an email, like WhatsApp. If somebody sends me a WhatsApp, my number is 322-131-4805. They can actually WhatsApp me and I immediately give them my email so we can continue the conversation.
Great. We'll put all that contact information in the description of the podcast so people can get a hold of you. Orlando, thank you so much. It's great to see you.
Sure. Anytime. If people, like I like actually my job, so I like to answer questions. I like to help people.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Orlando. Really appreciate it. And I hope to see you soon. Thank you so much, Orlando. Take care. Bye now.
Your retirement in Mexico starts right here, and we're excited to be part of your journey. Every episode, we bring you the magic of Mexico, insider tips, and expert advice to help you take that next big step with confidence. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It helps others like you discover the endless possibilities waiting south of the border. Got a topic you'd like for us to cover? We'd love to hear from you. Send your suggestions to info@TanielChampson.com. And remember, a life well lived isn't left to chance. It's created with intention. See you next time.